Good afternoon, everyone. Leon Vainstein here from Los Angeles, California. The world is watching with bated breath the possible beginning of a serious war in the Middle East. Today, we will talk about what led to this strike, to the Israeli strike on Iran. Who knew about this? Who will be pleased and who will be upset? About how this war might affect the surrounding world, who benefits from it. Well, I'll say right away that both Russia and Ukraine will take advantage of the fact that the world is busy with other things and will try to inflict as much damage as possible on each other in terms of equipment, infrastructure, and manpower. Israel has been moving toward this day since October 7, 1923. But in reality, they had been preparing and planning much earlier, understanding that this step was inevitable, because Iran was shouting death to everyone they didn't like too loudly. Since 1980, Iran has been working on creating an atomic bomb and missile carriers capable of delivering these warheads to Israel and Europe. The mullahs want to become irreplaceable, and the best guarantee for that is the ability to drop an atomic bomb on Paris, Brussels, London, Jerusalem, and Bonn. Several times, Iranian scientists came quite close to their goal, but each time either the world discovered Iran's secrets or Israel bombed those secrets. In the last year of Obama's administration, who, in my view, hated Israel and America about equally, the Iranian leadership received an unprecedented opportunity to fulfill their cherished desire. Europe and the United States signed an agreement with them not to develop nuclear weapons for 10 years. So you don't do it now, but then you get the green light. Please do as much as you want, whenever you want, however you want, but just wait 10 years. In other words, starting from October 18th, 2025. Iran could start its program again, resume its nuclear weapons development program, now with the consent of Europe and the United States. Every day, morning and evening, the Iranian leadership repeated, "We will destroy Israel as soon as we get nuclear weapons." Russia, North Korea, and Pakistan pledged to help accelerate this program and assist in this noble goal. Iran, as we all understood and as it became known, did not stop uranium enrichment and secretly continued the very same program it had pledged to end. Inspectors were not allowed to visit sites that the Iranians, let's say, did not want inspectors to visit. And behind the scenes, Iran even made an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency that they would inspect themselves, and then report as if they had been inspected by international inspectors. Wonderful, really, all these international organizations make us very happy, all the time, right? So when Trump 45 came to the White House, he canceled this ridiculous agreement, and suddenly it turned out that Iran was preparing in many locations. So not only bombs, but also missiles that are capable of reaching, as I already said, Israel and Europe. And every day, morning and evening, the mullahs, and with them the entire Iranian people, believers in Allah and the mullahs. I don't know, they were shouting something else. Death to Israel, and at the same time, death to America. And whenever there was news about problems in these two countries, the people, the Iranian people, would go out into the streets, dance, and rejoice at any misfortune of the Israelis or Americans. Biden came and practically lifted all the sanctions. I don't remember if it was all or just some, but I think it was all the sanctions that were on Iran. And Iran was able to rebuild the terrorist international network, including, accordingly, puppet operations like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iranian patriots who are in Iran and Iraq, and the Assad regime in Syria. And Iran found where to sell its hydrocarbons. And that means, besides, well, that's in China. And besides, they received more than $160 billion in cash from Obama, which was flown in by planes from Europe. They got shadow money, which, as they say, could be distributed all over the world, and with which they could organize and operate terrorist organizations practically all over the world. After getting Trump 47, whom they tried to destroy, to kill, to put it simply, meaning to organize an assassination attempt, the Iranians began actively cooperating with Russia, supplying them with drones and other weapons in exchange for centrifuges and nuclear weapons technology. But there was an exchange before Trump. Israel neutralized Hamas, eliminated the leadership of Hezbollah, and pushed Hezbollah to the northern part of Lebanon, farther from its borders. At the same time, Turkey captured Syria. They kicked out Assad and his inner circle from Damascus to Moscow, and he was a vassal of Iran. Of course, Iran still had the Houthis, whom Trump bombed, and they still had units inside Iraq. So if seriously Iran's puppets could no longer play their role, continuing their assigned role as attack dogs on the approach to Iran, like North Korea is for China, then there are significantly fewer of them now, and Iran is now left almost one-on-one with Israel and the Western world. On April 14, 2025, President Trump wrote to the Iranian leadership, "We will not wait forever. You have 60 days to show real progress in the negotiations. If you do not agree to abandon your pursuit of creating an atomic bomb, there will be consequences." Trump never explains what consequences means, and he didn't in this case either. And on June 13, 2025, it was exactly the 61st day, meaning 60 days had passed since the writing of that very warning.
The Middle East on EDGE. The Middle East is on edge after Israel carried out a series of strikes on Iran's nuclear and missile facilities, destroying Tehran's chain of command. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says this is just the beginning.
This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to eliminate this threat. The Jewish state refuses to be the victim of a nuclear holocaust orchestrated by the Iranian regime. I have repeatedly made it clear that Israel will never allow those who call for our destruction to obtain the means to achieve that goal.
Israel reports shooting down dozens of Iranian drones. In response, President Trump is urging Iran, quote, to make a deal while there is still something left before meeting with his National Security Council. White House correspondent Edward Lawrence is joining us with the latest news. Hello, Edward.
Hello, Dajiki. All of this creates that very uncertainty about global oil supplies, and that affects the markets, causing oil prices to rise. The president, as we believe, is now finishing that very national security meeting in the Situation Room with his national security team. This morning on Truth Social, the president stated that those radicals in Iran acted boldly. Now they are all dead, and the situation will only get worse. There have already been many deaths and destruction, but there is still time to put an end to this massacre because the next planned attacks will be even more brutal. Iran must make an agreement before it is too late.
But what was happening behind the scenes? Operation Rising Lion, naturally that's from the Bible, was being prepared for 8 months. The first phase included 3 waves of strikes. Mossad set up a drone manufacturing facility in Iran, and on the 61st night, they launched them into the air. And with the help of operators who were also in Iran, the drones headed toward the residential areas where the Army and National Guard leadership lived. The chief of the Iranian General Staff and his first deputy were eliminated immediately by precise strikes right in their bedrooms. At the same time, 4 more officers who were supposed to command the response to possible Israeli attacks were killed. So in their bedrooms, there were, by the way, 2 more people. They are the leading developers of Iran's nuclear weapons and missiles. That is, the entire chain of command was completely disrupted, which means panic and confusion about what to do. at least in the first hours of Israel's attack on the so-called nuclear and various missile sites. The second wave targeted Iran's enrichment center. That's Katanu, I think it's called, and Fordo, where the reactors were located. And then the laboratories in Khandab and Harambad and the ballistic missile warehouse located in Parchir were targeted. All the strikes were successful. Mossad operatives in Iraq coordinated these attacks 12 hours before the strike. Trump said at the press conference.
It's very simple, nothing complicated. Iran must not have nuclear weapons. I want them to succeed and to be successful. We will help them achieve success, and we will trade with them. We will do whatever is necessary.
In my usual manner, I have no hard feelings toward them. Let them do what we want from them, and we will be very happy with their success and will even help them. Iran couldn't help but respond. Of course, honor demands it. And over the past day, about 150 ballistic missiles and 100 drones were launched toward Israel. All the drones were intercepted, but 2 to 7 missiles got through the defenses, broke into the suburbs of Tel Aviv, and exploded. Naturally, a building was damaged, apparently, so to speak, and one residential house. That is one, let's say, some kind of office or industrial building and one residential house. Now, several cars parked nearby have burned down. 63 people were injured, 2 are in serious condition, 1 in serious, the other in critical condition. Well, the rest basically got away with what you might call shrapnel wounds or scratches. So, with the cost of an Iranian ballistic missile being about $1 million, that means Iran spent $150 million on missiles, plus drones and other small things, and achieved this. Damage, partial damage to 2 buildings costing $50,000 to $100,000 to repair, plus 2 seriously wounded Israelis. So that's $75 million and 75 ballistic missiles, respectively. At this rate, Iran would have to spend $525 billion to wound 7 million Israelis. And they would have to do this with 525 million missiles. But they only have 1,000, and they'll have another 1,000 by the end of 26. Well, 2,000 missiles are less than what Iran needs. 525 million missiles.
Iran is a major oil producer, or could it be? With the ongoing war in Iran and the conflict with Israel, retaliatory strikes are possible. Israel may attack oil facilities, and this could disrupt the flow of oil from Iran. This will lead to a decrease in supply at a time of year when many Americans are traveling. Demand is higher in the summer months, and that's why oil prices are reacting this way.
Some market experts believe that this may be an overreaction, since there is enough oil in the world. The head of the International Energy Agency says that oil reserves are sufficient, and they are ready to intervene if necessary. It remains to be seen what the long-term consequences will be.
Israel is ready to bomb everything in Iran related to oil, which would immediately make Iran a poor country and would most likely lead to a regime change. The sky over Iran is no longer protected by anything. Everything, so to speak, all the beer has been knocked out. Well, as Netanyahu said, we can destroy your entire oil industry, or we can choose not to do it. You have 2 options. Step aside and let us destroy everything related to nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. But if you decide to attack us or America, we will blow up all your oil refineries, ports, oil storage facilities, and practically destroy your economy. This was an address to the leadership of Iran, to the people of Iran. Netanyahu said, "We want to be friends with Iran, and we want you to be able to get rid of your nightmarish freaks in the government." I'm paraphrasing everyone. He phrased it slightly differently. And we are and will be friends of Iran, of the Iranian people. We had a wonderful relationship. Our closest friends in the Middle East were Iran before those bastards came. So yes, well, I want to put the cherry on the cake in the middle. Not at the end, in the middle, because I'll still finish with some interesting things about Israel, so the cherry on the cake will be right now. I was sent a show, about the reactions of Ukrainians. Alexander Shilest, 1 million subscribers, and someone named Snezhana Yegorova, a similar ideologue of Ukrainian nationalism.
Look, all these events in the Middle East and in Ukraine, they are directly connected to each other. But what exactly connects them? They are connected by a certain legal nation, which, as is known, has penetrated all spheres of influence, informational, governmental, and financial. We are very familiar with this factor. It cannot be ignored that Jewish nationality includes very intelligent, very subtle, very clever, and creative people who can get into any place because they possess certain qualities.
That is, Jews are such a subtle, intelligent, and clever nation that can get into any place. Places are not specified because we possess certain qualities. We have infiltrated Iran, as I understand it.
It's not for us to tell, and it's not for us to be surprised. Because a person of Jewish nationality is now leading our Slavic country, which until recently was still Slavic.
A country that until recently was still Slavic. That's how it is, ladies and gentlemen. Snezhana is no pushover. And what's so bad about that?
Under his careful leadership, as we can see, the stronghold of Orthodoxy in Ukraine is being destroyed. The canonical Orthodox Ukrainian Church is being eliminated under various pretexts, under the slanderous pretext that supposedly the church was inciting discord. In general, under various pretexts, churches are being seized, monasteries are being destroyed, people are being killed, imprisoned, and so on and so forth.
That is the terrible Jew Zelensky, by the way, baptized, so from my point of view, he is a convert. That is absolutely not one of us. Take him with everything he's got. But nevertheless, because his blood is Jewish, he supposedly has a tail and maybe even horns, though honestly his wife would know better about that. And he's destroying orthodoxy, to which he belongs, which was built by holy anti-Semites. And what kind of anti-Semites? And in Little Russia, Great Russia, and Ukraine, it's built by saints. Orthodoxy is built by Ukraine and Great Russia. Why is that? Everyone is silent, except for Snezhana, of course. Why is everyone silent? Everyone is silent.
It's just that by definition, no one wants to bring up this issue. We, the children of the Soviet Union, were taught that there is a trump card of the Jewish people called the Holocaust. And anyone who suddenly starts to say something or make any claims against representatives of the Jewish nationality is immediately labeled with the terrible term anti-Semite. That is, you can make claims against anyone. The Russians came, they're killing. The Ukrainians, well, they're Banderites, so they're killers. And only the Jews are the unfortunate victims who are always burned, chased, destroyed, and they, poor things, just keep going, keep going. So with the sun overhead, repeating, God will judge him. Because the war in the Middle East, where Israel has been the outpost of American foreign policy for many years, basically, was in a hostile environment. Basically, it was like a small island of a Jewish state among Arab countries that, in general, didn't have any positive feelings toward Jews, because they've always had a constant struggle, a war. Since the time of Abraham, from Ishmael, the father of all Muslims, whom Sarah, Abraham's lawful wife, actually threw out into the desert, along with his mother Hagar, so that they would die there, because she had already given birth to her own Jewish children. And since then, even though these are supposedly fairy tales, supposedly some myths, some legends, some parables, even modern people today, When they are in a state of conflict in Israel, Arabs and Jews go head to head, and the Jews shout at the Arabs, "You are bastards. You are not legitimate sons of our father Abraham, but we are legitimate ones."
Honestly, I don't remember ever telling Arabs in Israel that they are illegitimate and that I am legitimate. And to be completely honest, I've never heard anything like that in conversations either. Not in conversations with Arabs, not in conversations with Jews. Are there or could there be such idiots in Israel? Easily. By the way, I also met 2 Napoleons and 1 Shalyapin in Israel. I ran away from Shalyapin. But why? Why? Jews have infiltrated everywhere and are doing their slippery business.
In order to relocate Israel to the territory of Ukraine, a big war needs to be started here, and Netanyahu is handling this perfectly. They tell the slaves, the brainless beings who know nothing about life, that actually we are bringing you democracy and you will be happy, you dumb slaves. So put everything upside down, we'll shove our stuff into you and twist it in your backside so that you feel that life is beautiful and amazing. In fact, what they needed was this aggressive group of people who escaped from the Holocaust, from persecution, settled on this land and began to conquer and reclaim their living space. So the fact that the Palestinians let them onto their land and welcomed them with open arms did not make them grateful at all. So the Jews started fighting, they were militant, and they still are militant. They always just pretend to be such great thinkers. But in reality, they have serious squads that are ready to kill and die for their faith.
Well, you see, it turns out everything is simple. And what did you think? Interesting, isn't it? That's what 50% of Ukraine's population thinks, or 95%. Judging by how much they hate Trump, America, Netanyahu, and Israel, it's closer to 95%. Yes, looking through the Ukrainian press over the last 2 or 3 months, I no longer see any fight against Putin there. Ukraine has risen up in a unified surge to fight against Trump, and also against the Republican Party and all the Trump supporters, some of whom are among those listening to me now. Now, I haven't read this to you yet. The comments that were written in response to what Snezana said, I just want to tell you one thing. Compared to what's written in the comments, Snezana is like an angelic snowflake.
Sakal, during the strike on the Iranian regime's air defense system, destroyed dozens of radars and surface-to-air missile launchers. As Sakal writes, quote, "In the past few hours, Air Force fighter jets, under the precise guidance of the Intelligence Directorate, carried out a massive strike on the Iranian regime's air defense system in western Iran. During the attacks, dozens of radars and surface-to-air missile launchers were destroyed. And as noted in the report, throughout the entire war, the Israel Defense Forces systematically targeted the air defense system of the Iranian regime and its proxies in the Middle East." In addition, a very interesting point has come up here because, according to Israeli media, Israel had been preparing for years for an operation against Iran's nuclear and missile programs. The preparations included creating a drone base inside Iran and transferring precision weapons and special forces operatives into the country. According to the spokesperson, Mossad agents created a drone base on Iranian territory near the capital, Tehran. These drones were activated at night and struck the surface-to-surface missile launchers aimed at Israel. In addition, vehicles equipped with weapon systems were secretly brought into Iran. These systems disabled the Iranian air defense systems, giving Israeli aircraft air superiority and freedom of action over Iranian territory that night. And what now?
You may ask. Option 1. Iran makes every effort to inflict as much damage as possible on Israel. Response: destruction of Iran's economy. Option 2. Israel pretends to be making every effort, but in reality quietly hides away in a corner. Israel then destroys everything related to nuclear and missile production, but does not touch energy and industry. And in both cases, Iran quickly runs to Trump and begs him to lift the sanctions just to survive somehow. And if there are any opposition forces in Iran, they bring people out into the streets. After that, of course, no one can predict anything. And something like a Maidanovich happens there. And will anyone help Iran? That's a good question. Not Saudi Arabia, well, not the Sunnis, right? Iran is at war with them, as they say, not for life, but to the death. Russia, in its own war, is unlikely to get involved, so to speak. It might say something, go to the United Nations, make some statements, but that's about it. I don't believe China will intervene. What could it accomplish there anyway? Especially since America is saying, let us sell you oil at good prices too, so to speak, just leave Iran. Especially since China's economy is in a very tough situation. And in fact, they are now looking for opportunities to make peace with America, and a good way to do that would be to say, please, we will buy oil from you. And right away, so to speak, the imbalance will start to decrease. Things like that, Trump will like it. So, well, a lot of positive things will come out of this. Who else is out there? Europe? Well, they'll definitely be mumbling something about human rights, but they don't have soldiers or weapons. I mean, maybe they sent them somewhere, but they're not there. They have blue helmets, they can put them on lesbian girls and send them somewhere half naked. And Georgia won't help, it's too small and in general, so to speak, already under Russia's heels, so it's just groaning. Turkey may not be an enemy of Iran, not really an enemy, but not a friend either, more like a rival. Turkey just took Syria away from Iran, so there's not a lot of love between them. Who's left? The Houthis, who might start firing at merchant ships and at Israel, but they'll be quickly stopped by the United States Navy. There are units of these Iranian fighters in Iraq. They might start shelling United States military bases that are located in Iraq. Then the United States will get involved in this conflict, and no other significant global power will join Iran. I think that 1 or 2 missiles breaking through into Israel will satisfy the demands of wounded Iranian pride, especially among the hawks there. And they will go back to reviewing the peace terms proposed by Trump. Between Abraham's children from Sarah and his children from Hagar, wait just a second. The Iranian Persians have nothing to do with this. Sorry, they definitely have nothing to do with it. It's those from Saudi Arabia, from Jordan, and so on, but these ones definitely don't.
Israel has launched what it calls a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities and other military targets.
We struck at the very heart of Iran's uranium enrichment program. We struck at the very heart of Iran's nuclear weapons program.
The 6th round of nuclear talks between the United States and Iran was scheduled for Sunday. Since President Trump sought to avoid conflict, the United States did not participate in these strikes.
The president of Iran responded by saying that the country's level of strength and actions would make Israel regret today's actions.
Israel attacks Iran. Iranian nuclear facilities and ballistic missile factories were hit, and top Iranian commanders were killed. Israel calls this Operation Rising Lion, which Prime Minister Netanyahu described as a decisive moment in Israel's history. Iran was left helpless because while Israeli missiles were flying over the country, Mossad operatives were carrying out covert assassinations of top Iranian military officials. Israel also built drone bases inside Iran, which were activated during this operation, similar to the Ukrainian Operation Web. The drones from these bases were activated before the Israeli strike began. And they destroyed Iran's entire air defense system. Let me repeat that once again. They destroyed Iran's entire air defense system. That's why 12 hours after the operation began, Israeli fighter jets are still flying over Iranian skies with impunity.
And the future, well, it will come, I'm almost sure of that. But what kind of future it will be, I can't tell you. And I don't know, it seems like no one can say. Goodbye. Thank you all for watching and listening.